Good morning, and I'm pleased to be here. I think we are the poster child for the fast-evolving and complex digital world, and I'm going to try and, in a few minutes now, I think with the aid of slides, describe really why it is that we built the service that we have built, what is the driving philosophy behind that, and then talk about some of the both technical solutions and the regulatory interventions that have led us to the design that we have today. And I may also briefly touch on current topical issues. So I am looking at 4 slides. Perfect. So in terms of the vision that Facebook brings, our service is all really built around 2 basic concepts. The concept of creating a web of connections and the concept of sharing things with each other. And that sharing can be with groups from very small family groups through to sharing with the whole world. And really, I think what we bring to the web essentially is a single network that allows essentially over 500 million people now to connect with each other and carry out these sharing activities. Those 500 million people, around a quarter of them are in the United States, 3/4 are now across the globe. The service is offered in over 70 languages. And the way that the site is used is that over half of those people are on the service every day. So around 250 million people are connecting to this service on a daily basis. The site now is offered in a lot of different flavors, from very light mobile flavors. I was fascinated to hear the discussion yesterday around whether people are going to go through wireline phases at all or simply go straight to mobile. And clearly our engineering response has been to develop products that do work on a mobile-only basis. I think we're now over 150 million mobile users now using the service. So we're trying to offer it to everybody globally and trying to offer them all the ability to connect through this platform. The philosophy that I think drives that is one of creating what I would call a soft identity for people on the net. So it's not a hard identity like a biometric identity that the governments may use, but a soft identity based on those connections and that sharing. You are the people you connect to. You are the things that you share. That creates your identity within this space. And for me, it was summed up by typically words of teenagers often tell us in the technology industry what we should be thinking about. But this teenager summed it up for me when she said, "I wish that I knew that people were who they say they were when I meet them on the net." And essentially, she was summing up a position that the internet is now simply too important for us to use it in the original mode, which was this. That classic phrase that on the internet nobody knows you're a dog. Now, I didn't use the original cartoon because there's copyright fees to pay for public presentations. I've used a Flickr image, but essentially this original notion of the internet that we kind of prized was on the internet nobody knew you were a dog, nobody knew who you were entirely anonymous. And that anonymous use of the internet still exists, and there are circumstances where all of us may wish to prefer to be anonymous, but essentially if you like, the bet of Facebook is that there are more and more situations where that anonymity, far from being an advantage, is a disadvantage. That there are far more situations now where, when I interact with a piece of content on the web, rather than it being a one-to-one interaction, me and a website, nobody else involved, I'm increasingly going to be looking for a social experience. So when I engage with that piece of content on the web or when I play that game, I want to know which of my friends are engaged in the same activities. When I make a comment on a newspaper website, which I could do anonymously as angry citizen, I would often make a comment that might not be particularly coherent because I was simply commenting as angry citizen. I'm increasingly switching from that anonymous commenting to a known, identifiable commenting whereby my friends can see the fantastic comment that I've made because I've shared it through the platform. And so that kind of social experience is something that we think is increasingly significant. And it's created through the building of this profile on the service, created through the connections that you make, created through the sharing that you offer. And so increasingly, when you meet somebody on the net, if they have a profile through a social network, you can put them into context, you can engage with them in a different way. Now, there are some potentially major conflicts to resolve around this. Some have to be resolved between users. This is a photo posted by an old friend of mine. I like the fact that I had a nice car at that time. I don't like the fact that I'm smoking in that photo. Smoking is completely now socially unacceptable. He's posted that photo up there. I need to have a method of now resolving any conflicts I have between me and that individual. And again, photos are one of the classic touchstone areas where people raise concerns, that people are, on a service like ours, 500 million people are posting content about each other. And traditionally, we have a lot of regulatory mechanisms which are based on the notion of small citizens and big organizations. And we have redress mechanisms which are quite heavyweight for an individual to challenge, for example, a newspaper that published a photo about them. We're, within a service like Facebook, having to develop mechanisms for individual users to challenge each other. So lightweight mechanisms of redress, and we have them through things like tagging and detagging, but that's a constant challenge. How do you, in this world of user-generated content, allow people to challenge each other's speech about each other without necessarily resorting to heavyweight traditional regulatory mechanisms? On the privacy side, for us, the key to getting people to feel comfortable using this environment and wanting to carry that identity with them is the fact that they are able to choose what they share and with whom they share it. And there's been a lot of debate around privacy controls. I would sum up the biggest challenge as being how to achieve simplicity and granularity all at the same time. But what typically happens is, as your service develops, you develop more and more granular controls for individuals. They want to be able to control every aspect of their usage. As you do that, it becomes more complex. And so then you have to have a process of correction where you try and then package the controls up into simpler bundles, and that's what we've done this year. So granularity versus simplicity is a constant challenge. We're happy with where we've got to at the moment, but anyone who follows the press will recognize that there have been discussions, shall we say, robust discussions between ourselves and in many cases our user community, to whom we've given actually the best possible campaigning tool for them to tell us what they think about our service. And that conversation has been going on through the year and led to this latest iteration. In fact, our favourite Facebook group is "I hate the changes to Facebook, whatever they are," which is a popular one with several million members. There is a kind of inherent protest mechanism that takes place within the site. Some of that protest is around the design features, some of it's around the privacy features, and we have to respond to it because of the strength of that user base. When it comes to minors, there is a recognition that we need special protections. And on this, for example, this is one of the areas where we had interaction with the regulator. The Spanish regulator made it very clear to us that in Spain you have a law that says you mustn't collect data of minors under 14. Typically for the rest of the world it's under 13, following the US Copper Act. But we made that adjustment for 14 in Spain at the request of the regulator, and that was very important. That piece of legal compliance is very important to us, and making sure that we get minors right is very important. They actually constitute 13% of our user base. So 87% of our users are 18 plus, and only 13% are 13 to 17. That's often kind of misunderstood. People think that social networks are just for kids. They're not. They're much more for adults. And the typical scenario now is somebody in their 30s has babies, and they say to their parents in their 60s, if you want to see the photo of the babies, you've got to come onto Facebook. And so we're seeing that intergenerational playing out. But for that minors group, we do need to make sure the service has proper protections, and there are some very specific controls and limitations on minor usage. The other part of getting this right is making sure that we're fully transparent. Again, here we have the classic granularity, simplicity challenge again. Our privacy policy has to be long. The lawyers require it to be long. We due respect to lawyers because our privacy policy has to cover everything that we do, and regulators will complain if we don't have everything in the privacy policy. But our users need something simple. So the balance that we've reached, and I think more and more services are doing, is to have two stages of privacy policy. You have one screen that tells you all the key facts, and then you can drill down and see the full longer document if you want to. And I think that's an interesting evolution. I'd be very interested to hear how others are trying to tackle this issue of completeness in your privacy statements versus simplicity for the user. The other key element where we've been working hard is around the security piece. Again, making sure that as you develop this online identity, that you're able to keep it secure is critical to the success of our business. So we have a lot more security information, and we've been innovating. So if, for example, your Facebook users and you're logging into your account from an unusual location, you now may get asked additional security questions, so rather like the online banking models. And we're finding we're constantly having to upgrade the security systems to try and keep the bad guys from trying to game the way that we're working. 1 minute. just to touch on the story of the day, with applications, we find that our users like applications. We, as a core service, are not going to develop everything that people want. So they are plugging in social games and other applications. Our response following an engagement with a Canadian regulator has been to offer our users much more information about what data those applications are accessing. And we just launched a screen now where you can literally go and see when an application last accessed your data and what data they accessed. So we're trying, again, to create that transparency. The story in the press, if people are interested, we can talk about it in questions maybe, but essentially is saying that some of the people who are operating as developers have taken our data and used it in an inappropriate manner. And again, we have a relationship, a contractual relationship with those developers, and are considering what forms of action we're able to take when people fail to meet our customer expectations. So just to close with this comment, again, from one of our engagements with regulators, and we do, as a matter of policy and philosophy, even though we are entirely hosted in the US in terms of where our data physically is today, wherever regulators where we have sizable user bases want to engage with us, we try and engage with them and understand their concerns and try and build those in. This was a comment from the Canadian regulator with whom we've had an engagement over the last 18 months or so, and I thought summed up excellently the fact that we are only beginning to develop rules of engagement for this world of user-generated content, this world of soft identity and sharing, and this world of a social web, which is quite fundamentally different, I think, from the original one-to-one notion of the web that we had perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. Thank you.